Okay, it says I'm live right now. I did something different today and just figured I would hop right onto YouTube and do this lesson for you guys. We do have Enlightenment slides for this week if you would like to review those. I figured that would be something that we could also do together on Friday. So before I start talking about what enlightenment is and this new unit, I just wanted to quickly and briefly go over some of the material that we've gone over so far for modern world history, and then the expectations for assignments for this week. Looking back, we have learned about what absolutism is, or the absolute monarch. So I started reading into your reviews because you looked over slides last week, you watched a couple of videos, and a majority of you guys got it correct that absolute monarchies are monarchs that are, born into that position. But here's what makes an absolute monarch different, right? And I think I went over this in my last YouTube video as well. But an absolute monarch takes absolute control, takes absolute power, right? And not only do they do that, but they are given what's called divine right. So in the 15, 16, and some of even the 1700s, we had kings in Europe that said, God gave me the right to rule. Okay. And I know that sounds crazy now because, we don't really have a lot of places around the world that rule in this way. But when religion at this time really just embodied all of life, to have someone say that God chose you as a leader was like, it was divine. It was holy. It was sacred, right? And to have people question your rule would be to question God's will, God's, choice, right? And if you know anything about the 15 and 1600s, to question God was a very dangerous move. And really, the Catholic Church used this as a scare factor. People would be burned at the stake or hung out in public if they questioned God. And they were called what's known as a heretic. If you've ever heard of the Salem witch trial in the United States during this time, same phenomenon, right? That women are witches and hear voices and they're crazy and, the devil has possessed them. And so we have to, kill or execute these women. The medieval time was a very hysterical time, right? And you're like, okay, but I'm in modern world history. What does this have to do with anything? We didn't wake up modern, okay? We didn't just become a modern civilization, right? I have two people watching right now. Hi. We didn't wake up modern one day, okay? This is a slow progression of history. So that's why we have to kind of talk about what happened leading up into the modern world, is because all these different factors will lead into the world that we know of today, right? So absolute monarchs, absolute power, okay? What I say goes. If you have ever heard the phrase, maybe a teacher or your own mother has said, because I said so. That's really a common phrase at this time. So now that we understand what absolutism is, or an absolute monarch, we're going to move forward into the next unit, which is the Enlightenment era. So we mentioned how, both absolute and constitutional monarchs will start to explore and colonize the world around them. But we slowly progress into the time period called the Enlightenment era. And maybe you've heard of the phrase to be enlightened before. Maybe you've heard it in another history class. I know some of you guys are actually in my U.S. history class right now. So I know that we've talked about this. But this idea is going to spark revolutions worldwide, okay? And we're going to look at all kinds of different revolutions around the world, not just the American Revolution. We'll look at the French Revolution. We'll look at the Haitian Revolution. There was a revolution in the Philippines that we can investigate, the Cuban Revolution. So we're going to look at all these different revolutions and what sparked these ideas, okay? But again, people didn't just wake up enlightened. So what happened? We start to see people are writing about their beliefs and their questionings about religion and the church and their government. And again, this is risky business. Your books could be burned out in the streets of, your village. Voltaire, which is one of the Enlightenment thinkers that you guys will learn about, used what's called a pen name. So he didn't even use his real name because he was, afraid of the dangers that come behind so publicly speaking out against his own king. And in fact, he'll actually be imprisoned as a political prisoner for a year in what's called the Bastille, which is a very famous Parisian prison. So beside the point, we have these very highly educated philosophers, which are known as philosophes, that start to beliefs a little bit more. So think about like a common hashtag today or, a tweet, right? And so the ideas will start to spread like wildfire. Okay. And so a lot of the basis around these ideas has to do with freedoms and liberties and individual rights. And it's not to say that people didn't believe in this beforehand, but it becomes a lot more of a popular idea in society. Okay. One of the most famous enlightened thinkers that we'll learn about is John Locke. Everybody's heard of John Locke, whether or not you know him by name, you know him by his beliefs, right? The Declaration of Independence was written with the inspiration of John Locke, that we have these natural rights. We are born as American citizens with these rights. These rights cannot be taken away from us by our government or by anybody. These rights need to be protected by our government, and they cannot be denied. So a lot of these ideas are going to spread throughout society at this time, especially Western Europe. But again, some of these revolutions will inspire other revolutions, and it just creates a chain effect. Okay. So that's really what this time period is all about. It's also called the Age of Reason. So 1685 to 1815 is a time period that we're going to be looking at and kind of unpacking together. It's 150 years. So it's a lot that happens during this time. So we'll spend some time kind of going over this unit together. But instead of just saying, well, God said so, why is the sky blue? Well, God said so. People want to have concrete evidence. They want to have a reason or a rationale for why things around them are the way that they are. And that's in the science realm, like Copernicus, Isaac Newton. But then that also has to do with the governmental realm, which is like John Locke, Baron de Montesquieu, Thomas Hobbes, and so forth. So we'll be diving into those people and how they kind of contributed to the time period. Talk about the Enlightenment forever because I think it's really interesting how just ideas and sharing those ideas can create change. And I think that that's so important about history is understanding like how impactful people can be, how impactful can be, right? But on Friday, we can go through those slides a little bit more and investigate. Tomorrow, you have a little personality quiz that you'll take. It's already on there if you want to start it. I think it's 9 questions. You can print it out, fill it out, or you can write it on a separate sheet of paper. You're going to follow through the different statements, and then it'll tell you what your personality is like in comparison to an Enlightenment thinker. And then there's 2 or 3 follow-up questions that you need to answer as well. You can put it in the comment section of your assignment, or you can just write it at the bottom of your assignment. I'm actually about to go take the quiz because I'm curious to see which Enlightenment thinker that I am most like. So we'll do that tomorrow. And then Friday, we have a mandatory Zoom. You'll jump in, pop in. You have 1 assignment dependent on if you are participating in my master's project or not. If you are participating in the project, it's a quick survey and you get 10 points for it. If you are not participating in my master's work, you have an exit slip, which is just 5 questions about the Enlightenment era. So Don't forget that I do have open tutor session times from 10 to noon on Fridays. Thank you so much for listening to me. I will say one more thing. If you don't follow my TikTok, you should. It's History with Hosher. And I actually go over some TikTok humor about the Enlightenment a couple different times. So maybe I'll post one or two of those just so you guys can see a little bit of the humor that can come from this time period too. So, okay, have a great day.